Blue hour drapes the high desert in bruised violet when Lena hears it, a thread-thin chirrup, more question than sound. She stops by a shuttered gas station, wind flicking grit across her ankles, creosote and old fuel-tainting air. Another chirrup, frayed. She slips between an ice chest and a dented dumpster and sees it, a palm-sized bobcat kit, tawny fur clumped with dust, ear tufts bent like wet matches, sides fluttering too fast. She cups the kit and feels almost nothing, just a frantic, hummingbird heart. A raven clacks from a pole, truck downshifts, the town keeps breathing. She forgets how. At home, under a single lamp, the kit's paw trembles over the ridge of her finger. Don't go. Morning will demand an answer she isn't ready to give. A stethoscope will stall, a vet will cry, and the desert asks, if you love the wild, can you let it be wild? She thinks she's carrying a life. She's also carrying a decision. Late summer pulls the sky thin outside Flagstaff, the kind of evening that turns rust to violet. The service station's neon is dead. Cicadas rasp in the creosote. After a double shift, Lena Park steps off the gravel shoulder, forearms ink-smudged, hair in a paint-specked knot, head dulled by the slide from coffee to quiet. The sound stops her mid-breath, a thread-thin chirrup, too high for a cat, too soft for a bird, more question than call. She turns, listening. Another chirrup. Frayed at the edges, it slides from the seam of shadow between an ice chest and a dented dumpster. The ice chest leaks cold into the alley. Lena slips sideways, shoulder-brushing chalked paint. Her phone light skims the concrete. In the dim, something small shivers. She crouches. The world tightens to two green eyes and a ribcage working like reeds. A bobcat kit, no larger than her thumb, ear tufts bent like wet matches, tail a stubby brush ringed with two dark bands. Tawny fur clumps with dust. Grit salts the whiskers. The tongue pokes dry against a milk-tooth ridge. The sides flutter too fast, as if a clock inside has lost its hands and run. A plastic cup skitters past, rolled by a stray gust. Beyond the canopy, a diesel growls and fades. A raven clacks from the pole and hops. Lena lowers her hands, not touching yet. The kit chirrups again, a thread pulled tight. She offers warmth. Her fingers tremble. Tiny claws catch lightly, more question than warning. She flinches, then holds steady. The first contact is temperature and pulse. The body is almost weightless. What she feels is a frantic hum against her skin, a hummingbird in a matchbox. Breath fogs in the cooler air, then disappears. She tilts the kit to keep the airway clear, remembering a page from a class she didn't finish, a teacher's voice she tried to forget. The memory tastes like copper. She inhales, counts with it. 1, 2, 3. "Hey," she says. Barely sound. "I've got you." The kit blinks slow, pupils full. The alley smells of old fuel, hot rubber, creosote, and something sweet and raw she can't name. She scans for a mother, trash behind the fence, a dark smear under the vending machine, paw marks in dust. Nothing moves that should be moving. The silence that answers is heavy. She tucks the kit closer to her chest to trap the warmth between their bodies. A bottle cap clicks beneath her knee. The highway hums like a far, cold river. The station window mirrors the last of the sky. She looks very small in it, a figure bent around a flicker. The ache behind her eyes sharpens but does not spill. She is very aware of the seconds. The kit's breath rattles, then steadies, then rattles again. She could walk away. Someone else could find it. Nature could finish what it started. Each sentence feels like a lie while the paw presses the ridge of her finger with a tremor that says, "Don't." She stands carefully, keeping the angle of the kit's head, the alignment of the tiny ribs, the bowl of her hands. The road promises distance. The ice chest hisses. The sky purples toward night. The desert doesn't bargain, but tonight she will. Studio apartment, second floor. The swamp cooler whispers like sleep that never quite arrives. Lena shoulders the door with her hip and clicks on a single lamp, dust motes rising like ash. She lays the bobcat kit on a folded dish towel, then cups it back up again, unable to trust air with something so small. The room holds its breath with her. She moves on instinct and on the scraps of memory that never quite left. A shot glass of kitten formula, swirled warm, tested on the wrist, a medicine dropper found in an old first aid tin, a rice sock heated in the microwave and wrapped in a dish towel until it feels like a small, safe sun. She lines a shoebox with an old flannel shirt, plaid worn to softness by years of laundry and regret. The kit doesn't cry, it opens its mouth and the smallest absence comes out. Lena steadies the dropper, touches the rubber tip to the dry tongue, waits. One blink, a second, a tentative lap, then another. Milk beads along whiskers, purling, sliding down to the towel like tiny moons. She counts each swallow as if numbers could build a bridge back to certainty. "Easy," she says, voice a thread to match the one she followed. She tilts the kit upright between her palms, rubs the belly clockwise, waits for the tiniest burp. It comes like a hiccup she almost imagines. Then the head lowers heavy as a coin and rests against the knuckle of her thumb. She wipes the dust from the ear tufts with a cotton swab dipped in warm water, checks for fleas with a comb, careful not to pull at skin as thin as paper. Finds none, finds only the smallness of everything. A drop of formula warms the air with a sweet, clean smell that feels borrowed from another room, another life. Timer set for 2 hours. She tucks the rice sock under the flannel, gauges the heat with the inside of her forearm, then slides the kit into the nest so that warmth touches belly and chest, not face. She listens, counts heartbeats in the soft of her wrist, feels them stutter, then smooth. The apartment is a small museum of the person she almost became and the person she is. A field guide to desert mammals slumps open on a shelf, pages feathered with old rain. On the opposite wall, a painting she made last winter. Juniper silhouettes at dusk, a sky the exact bruised color of tonight. She looks from the painting to the box and back, as if there might be instructions hidden between them. Another feed. The mouth opens quicker this time. The tongue finds its rhythm, tiny sips pulling life forward one bead at a time. When she pauses, a paw lifts and lands over the ridge of her finger. No more weight than a moth, all the insistence of need. She doesn't cry. Instead she talks, nonsense and comfort braided together. "You're okay, little Ember. You're here. Breathe. I'm not going." When the kit sleeps, she keeps a palm curved above it without touching, a shelter made of air. The swamp cooler rattles and stills. A siren threads the boulevard and dissolves. Her own breath grows careful, paced to the rise under the flannel. Minutes become soft coins she spends one by one. Before resetting the timer, she lifts the box and carries it to the couch. She lowers herself, leans back, and settles the kit against the steady metronome beneath her sternum. She builds a nest from flannel and denial. Grey light unspools across the ceiling before the alarm can chirp. Lena lifts herself from the couch, neck stiff, mouth dry, already reaching for the shoebox. The blanket looks undisturbed. For one beat her chest hollows. She peels it back. The bobcat kit lies tucked like a curled leaf, sides moving, thin, then thinner. She touches the dropper to a reluctant mouth. A single drop disappears. Another hangs and slides away. The pause between breaths spreads until it feels like falling. She moves by habit. Kettle, wrist test. A new measure warmed a shade higher. The steam ghosts the cold air. Again she offers the tip. Again nothing, then a weak lick that misses. The kit's paws twitch like exhausted swimmers. Lena presses 2 fingers along the ribs, counts, loses count, starts again. Decision arrives not as a thought, but as a door opening in her chest. Go. She tucks the kit inside her hoodie against the steady drum she can control. A soft cloth, the warm rice sock, her palm cupped beneath the chin so the airway stays true. Keys, wallet, phone. She forgets shoes, remembers, slides them on without tying. The hallway smells of last night's dinner and hall dust. A neighbour's chain rattles once and stills. Stairs take forever because speed jostles. She descends anyway. The sedan coughs awake. Dash lights bloom like small towns on a dark map. The clock blinks 5:08. She turns the heater low, not at the vents. The street outside is mostly silence. Traffic lights blinking amber, a bus sighing at nobody, a dog barking at its own echo. She pulls into the emptiness and keeps her voice low, matching it to her heartbeat. Hold on, hold on, hold on. She refuses the radio. She wants every sound. Tires hum over tar snakes, over patched seams that feel like the lines in a tired palm. A magpie lifts off the center line and becomes a black and white flicker in the rear view. The kit's weight is almost nothing, yet it anchors her entire body. At a red light, she presses her hand flat over the tiny rise beneath her collarbone, measures that rise against the ticking turn signal, finds the measure failing, wills it back. The route is muscle memory. Up Milton, right past the lumberyard, cut behind the feed store to avoid the long light. Dr. Rhodes will be there soon, even if the sign says closed. Lena lets the car slip through the last thin strip of night, breath sinking to the road's soft hiss. A prayer hidden inside each exhale. She holds the wheel with careful hands. If she can get there in time, maybe time will give her back a beat. Rhodes Veterinary sits low and adobe-fronted, a building that learned to hug the heat. When Lena pushes the door, chimes tremble, disinfectant braided with cedar threads the air. A child in a dinosaur shirt points from his mother's lap. Is that a bobcat? He whispers. The receptionist softens. Dr. Rhodes is here. 1 minute. She disappears through a swinging door. Owen Carter, vet tech, arrives first, quiet, careful, carrying a towel folded like an altar cloth. He guides Lena into exam 2, lights low, the steel table draped. We'll keep her warm, he says, setting a heating pad to the gentlest pulse. Imani Rhodes enters fastening a glove, the elastic snap final. She pauses before touching, the way people pause at the lip of cold water. With the back of a finger, she skims along a spine so slight it seems drawn in pencil. Tiny, she murmurs. Okay. The stethoscope slides under the towel. Owen angles a lamp, the kit's ear tuft quivers. Clinic noises fall away, the printers purr, a bark, the phones ring that no one answers. Lena measures her breath against quiet. A long, thin silence. Dr. Rhodes closes her eyes to listen. Her brow creases, lifts, creases again. When she speaks, certainty crosses a wobble. This shouldn't be possible. She opens her eyes to Lena's. The body says premature, the heart says fighter. Lena searches the vet's face. So she is alive because her heart is working harder than it should be able to, Rhodes says, removing an earpiece, then reseating it, as though unbelief could be argued away by listening again. Rate, strong, rhythm too steady for this size. Moisture rims her lashes, an admission the room didn't expect from a doctor built of competence. She glances toward the pale window. Last year, during the fires, a litter like this came off a line. We warmed, fed, prayed. None made dawn. Her glove squeaks on the towel as she steadies the kit with 2 fingers. I thought I'd buried the sound of a room like that. The kit's paw twitches toward the cold rim of the bell and rests there as if pleading directly into steel. The receptionist at the doorway covers her mouth. Owen looks down, then up, and nods. Rhodes inhales and builds a bridge out of instructions. Strict warmth, belly and chest, not face. Micro feeds every 2 hours. Smaller if she tires. Gentle stimulation after, help her eliminate. No visitors, drafts, perfumes, loud. Hydration is life. And Lena. She lets the name land. Remember, she's wild. I know, Lena says, hearing the need inside her voice. We'll check glucose, Owen says, opening a vial. And wait. If needed, a touch of subcutaneous fluids. Rhodes nods. And a formula calibrated for felids, not cows. You've done well with almost nothing. She meets Lena's eyes again. There's a line. We can save her and still ruin her. We won't. The prick is swift. The number is barely enough and not catastrophic. The weight could belong to a bird. Owen writes it down deliberately as if the act could tie the kit more firmly to the world. Name, the receptionist asks, barely a sound. Ember, Lena says, surprised to hear it aloud. Good. Rhodes lets out a breath, something between relief and ache. A thing that burns without flame. She peels off her gloves, rubs the bridge of her nose with her wrist. When her hand drops, her eyes are shining. We fight with her, she says, as long as she asks us to. Owen gathers a travel syringe, a tiny bottle, a printout whose neat bullets try to tame chaos. Rhodes adds a line in the margin. Call if the pause between breaths feels like a cliff. Lena folds the paper as if folding a promise. On the counter by the sink sits a jar of found feathers and a single mottled whisker, gifts patients left behind. Rhodes notices. Rehab, she says. Cinder Ridge. Once she's stable, we start that road. Lena nods, hands cupped and ready. The kit chirrups, sound thin as thread, somehow threaded through them all, and the room exhales together. It isn't only the kit's heart that startles her. It's the part of hers that wakes. Night folds around the studio like a held breath. The lamp makes a shallow pool of gold on the table. Beyond it, the desert is a black sea under cricket song. Lena resets the kitchen timer, thumb hovering as if it were a detonator. 2 hours. She has learned the length of a promise. She lifts the kit and feels the little engine again, not loud, persistent. She warms the formula, tests the heat on the inside of her wrist, then steadies the dropper at a tiny mouth. 1 sip, a pause, another. Between them, she rates each beat against her own pulse, calibrating hope to a body the size of her palm. The kit's eyes half close. The paw rises, rests on the ridge of her finger, a gesture that weighs almost nothing and fixes everything in place. Lena rubs the small belly, slow circles, a gravity for air. A burp arrives, grain of sand small, perfect. She exhales. In the quiet after, the refrigerator clicks. The swamp cooler breathes. The city murmurs far off like water through stone. A moth taps the lampshade and goes still. What to call a life that shouldn't be here and is? Names flicker and dim, coal, spark, ash. None hold the right temperature. She looks at the juniper painting across the room, the bruised sky she mixed months ago to remember a dusk she thought she'd lost. Heat without flame, she thinks. A glow that rides the wind but does not vanish. Ember, she says aloud, testing the shape. The kit's ear flicks as if accepting the terms. She tucks the warm rice sock against the flannel and beds the tiny body beside it, face clear. chest free. Her hand hovers over the nest, not touching, a weather system made of fingers and patience. She leans back on the couch, the timer beside her, the name settling through the room like light finding dust. Outside, a train horn drifts across the tracks, long and low, measuring distance while the timer measures faith in the dark. If a spark can answer, maybe it can become a fire. Days smear into a ribbon of alarms and the apartment learns a new orbit. Feed, warm, burp, clean, sleep, repeat. Blue painter's tape pins a schedule to the fridge, little squares marching across the week like flags. On a coffee-stained notepad, Lena writes ounces and minutes, her numbers first hesitant, then exact. Under the lamp, the shoebox becomes a hearth, and every 2 hours the room brightens, as if remembering fire. In the first deep night, Ember's breathing thins to thread. Lena tips the chin, rubs the sternum, whispers oxygen into fur. The kit shudders, then catches, then shudders again. Lena counts, anyway. A soft metronome she refuses to stop. When the rhythm holds, she laughs once without sound and sinks to the floor, palm hovering like a shelter. The swamp cooler rattles like distant rain. A train hoots beyond the yard, long notes raised to an indifferent sky. She warms formula, pretends the steaming mug beside it is courage, then forgets to drink and lifts the dropper again. Ember's tongue, pink as an unopened flower, finds the rubber tip faster now, drawing tiny sips that arrive like victories. Between swallows, a paw searches for her knuckle and lands. Barely weight, unmistakable claim. At dawn, she weighs Ember in a bowl lined with a towel. The jittering numbers think, then climb by 1 hopeful gram. She draws a small sun beside the number and smiles like a person remembering how. Afternoon drags her eyelids. She tries to sleep in the 40-minute valley between alarms and wakes with a sprinting heart. When she cannot sleep, she sketches, Ember folded like a comma. Ear tuft, kinked, faint spots surfacing as the fur dries. The drawings are clumsy, but her hand remembers lines it once abandoned. Another night, the canyon wren on her phone spills bright, tumbling notes meant for cliffs, not drywall. Ember startles. Lena silences the song and apologizes into fur. Learn fear of thunder, not of me. At 2 a.m., footsteps pause outside her door, then move on. Pipes tick. The heater sighs and thinks better of it. Ember toddles in place, legs forgetting they are new to standing. She lists, collapses, squeaks, then tries again. Lena lays 2 fingers on the rug like a bridge, and a paw steps onto them. Both rest there, breathing. Some nights, silence grows long and merciless. She strokes along the ribs until the skin ripples and cups the tiny skull. Here, she says, and the word is more than a place, it is an oath. When the gasp returns, heat flares behind her eyes. She wipes it away and thanks no one in particular. She texts Owen a precise question at 3:17. His reply is a quiet yes and a warning about overfeeding. She recalibrates the next measure and tucks the phone beneath the pillow, hiding its light from the thinned night. The apartment shifts to accommodate survival. The couch inches toward the outlet. The coffee table becomes a supply altar. Formula, droppers, wipes, cotton swabs, the little comb she hardly needs. Each object stands at attention. On the sill, a sprig of juniper in a chipped cup lends the air a green, resinous truth drywall cannot manage. Before dawn, coyotes throw their yips across the neighborhoods like a rope. Ember lifts her head and listens, wide-eyed. Lena feels the small engine hum under fur and lets the sound enter and leave without catching. Morning pushes through the blinds with ash-pink light. On the scale, numbers hesitate, then add 2 more grams. Ember finds the dropper with a startle of confidence and pauses mid-feed to rasp at the rubber, fierce and tiny. Lena snorts laughter, clamps a hand over her mouth and marks the chart with a star she hasn't used since childhood. Evenings bring stumbles. Once, Ember refuses every offering, jaw set, eyes turned inward. Lena warms her hands and waits. Gradually, the jaw remembers opening, the throat remembers swallowing. Afterward, Lena presses Ember to her heartbeat and counts aloud. By week's end, the gum line shows rose instead of ghost. The fur along the spine lifts thicker and a clumsy pounce appears. Progress doesn't shout, it taps once and asks you to listen harder. Saturday sun lays a clean stripe across the adobe stoop of Rhodes Veterinary. Inside, the bell jingles and the room hushes the way waiting rooms do. Voices thin, leashes whispering, shampoo and antiseptic braided in the cool air. A couple with a nervous terrier sits by the snake plant. An older man rocks a plastic carrier that ticks like a clock. At the counter, a blue heeler leans against a woman's shin, head tilted as if translating everything. Lena pushes in with Ember beneath her jacket, a barely there warmth against her ribs. The receptionist looks up, greeting ready, then sees the tufted ears and lifts a hand to her mouth. Oh! Owen Carter steps from the back with a towel folded like a stage curtain. Exam 2. His voice is soft, as if softness could make gravity kinder. On the stainless counter, the towel becomes a runway. Ember totters forward on hind legs that find themselves mid-step. Tail a banded brush keeping balance. The heeler lifts one ear, pupils widening. A kid in red sneakers tugs her mother's sleeve. Is that a bobcat? The mother nods without looking away. Dr. Imani Rhodes enters drying her hands, eyes already assessing, smile tucked small against habit. She doesn't reach first, she listens first. Stethoscope under towel, a palm curved above to hold heat low. The room narrows to breath, and the quiet silver circle against a chest the size of an apricot. She closes her eyes. The line of her shoulders changes. "Rate's strong," she says, barely above a whisper. Stronger than it has any right to be. She opens her eyes and meets Lena's. Something bright rises there and does not fall. She peels the earpieces away and laughs, one startled note, then blinks hard. She proved us wrong. Owen weighs Ember. The digits hesitate, then add. He writes the number in a practiced hand and draws a small star in the margin. The receptionist inhales the way people do when the world surprises them enough to rearrange their faces. The terrier stops pacing. Even the carrier's ticking seems to wait. Ember plants both forepaws on Rhodes's glove and issues a sandpaper chirrup, an argument the size of a thimble. The heeler's head tilts farther. The kid whispers, "That's the wild, right?" Her mother's fingers tighten on the leash until the leather creaks and she nods. Rhodes eases Ember back to Lena's hands, pressing their palms together as if passing a candle from one vigil to another. "Keep doing exactly this," she says. In the waiting room, conversations resume, but softer, as though the walls have learned reverence. Someone wipes a cheek, surprised to find tears. Quiet spreads. Miracles are louder when strangers hear them. News spreads the way scent does in hot air. Quiet, certain, everywhere. The story slips under doors and down stairwells. Marisol Vega from the end of the hall, still smelling of smoke and soap, knocks once and holds out a hand-sewn heat wrap cut from a flannel. "For the little wildfire," she says, voice hushed as a church aisle. She teaches Lena how to rewarm the rice without scorching, a trick learned on fire camp nights. An elderly neighbor, Mrs. Koenig, presses a rosary into Lena's palm, then blushes, unsure if the wild listens to beads. "Maybe you will," she says, and pats Lena's sleeve. On the elevator, a teenager with earbuds pulls one free and asks, "Not cool at all. Is she okay?" He nods at the answer, like the question was about more than a kit. At the laundromat, detergent and coins in her pocket, Lena hears it again. "How's the little wild one?" The woman folding towels doesn't look up, as if eye contact might break something fragile. Lena says, "Getting stronger," and realizes the reply is also a promise to herself. On the bulletin board, a child's drawing appears. Triangle ears, a square body, whiskers like sunbeams, and underneath, careful letters, Ember. Owen texts photos of a tiny stethoscope adapter he 3D printed, then leaves it at the clinic with a sticky note, "Borrow this any time." Dr. Rhodes emails 2 lines at dawn, "Remember, warmth is medicine. Remember, wild is the goal." The words feel like rails she can hold when the curve tightens. Lena opens her window at dusk. Juniper dark rises from the lot. The first star pricks through. Ember lifts her head from the nest, chirrups once, and watches shadows learn their shapes. Across the narrow courtyard, a neighbor sets a grocery bag by Lena's door. Formula, paper towels, a toy mouse with the tag still on. Lena smiles, then leaves the toy for the child who drew the picture. These small offerings add up to a circle. Neighbors learn her name before they learn each other's. Care starts with 2 hands. It grows an address book. By the 3rd week, Dr. Rhodes stops watching the scale and starts watching Lena's face. "She's stable," she says, voice low and sure. "Now we have to talk about what stable means for a wild cat." She writes a name on a card and slides it across the counter. Cinder Ridge Wildlife Center. "They'll teach her the desert you can't." Ruth Yazzie arrives 2 afternoons later in a sun-bleached pickup, the color of dried sage. Quiet boots, clipboard, dust on her cuffs like pollen. She shakes Lena's hand once, eyes moving the room the way weather does, measuring drafts, shade, sound. The swamp cooler sighs. Formula bottles stand at attention on the coffee table. The shoebox nest waits like a breath held. Ruth kneels, not crowding, no baby talk. She offers the back of her hand to scent, then a feather tied to monofilament. Ember's pupils round, her body flattens, shoulders rising into a tiny M. The crouch is real, the pounce clumsy but certain. "Good," Ruth murmurs, a field note made aloud. She checks ears, teeth edge, gait. She's earlier than her bones want, later than the world expected. That's workable. They sit at the table. Ruth flips the clipboard. "Imprinting is the cliff," she says. "If she loves hands, she'll die for them. So feed without eye contact. Gloves when you must handle. No talking during feeds, no laps, no faces pressed to fur, even when the night gets long." She sets a small packet on the table. Scent, swabs, juniper, mouse, soil. We teach the nose the map. Her thumb taps the list. Road aversion, predator awareness, safe denning, live prey transition. We can teach her what you can't. Fear of roads, skill with mice, shade over softness. Lena nods, throat tight. "When?" "Soon," Ruth says gently. "The window for wild stays open only so long." She reaches into her jacket and withdraws a cedar box, thumb-worn smooth. She cracks it a breath and closes it again. The air ghosts with wood and time. "Tokens," she says, not explaining further. "I open it on the hard days." Paperwork rustles, state permit numbers, transfer of custody, a rehab plan that reads like a map out of the apartment and into scrub and shadow. Lena signs where Ruth's pen taps. Her hand shakes once, then steadies. Across the room, Ember attacks a bald sock as if it were the only mouse left on Earth. The sight splits Lena's chest with a bright, precise ache. 2 days, Ruth says, standing. "I'll bring a soft crate. We'll keep everything quiet. You can come see the pre-release pen, but you can't visit after that." It's kinder to vanish than to blur the line. Lena walks her to the truck. Heat lifts off the hood in slow pains. On the dash, a wrinkled Polaroid shows a young coyote slipping into rabbit brush, a blur made of freedom and luck. Ruth follows Lena's gaze. "The ones who leave well are the ones we never see again," she says. "It hurts. That's how you know you did it right." That night, the apartment feels borrowed. Lena washes the flannel, snips a square for the crate, tucks a juniper sprig beside it, then reconsiders and sets the sprig back on the sill. She practices going still during feeds, eyes turned to the wall, hands steady, voice a seam she doesn't pick. Ember dozes between circuits of small, fierce play, oblivious to human arithmetic. Near midnight, Lena rests her wrists on the table, feeling the pulse in both like paired drums. The promise she made in the alley tightens and warms. She looks at the shoebox, then at the door, and understands that loving Ember means stepping out of the center of Ember's life. To love the wild is to hold it gently enough to let it leave. Late autumn lays honey-thin light across the red rock overlook. Wind carries juniper and cold stone. Lena kneels by the crate, hands still, face unread. Ember waits inside, bigger now but compact, ear tufts sharp, tail banded like a short brush. Ruth stands a few paces back, hat brim low, saying nothing. There is only the hush of distance and slow tick of cooling metal. Lena unzips the crate halfway, then all the way. Ember noses the air, resin, dust, mouse, weather. A sound like a held breath leaves the kit's throat, curiosity, not fear. She steps onto the earth that fits her better than cloth, pads to the edge of a pignon shadow, stops. At the sky, bruises toward violet. A raven scribbles once across it and vanishes. Ember looks back, not for permission, for a last measure of what will no longer be needed. In the sand, one paw print cups a bead of last night's rain, a tiny mirror steadying starlight before it forms. Lena presses 2 fingers to the wet impression, then to her sternum, matching the learned drum to the old one. She lifts her hand. The desert keeps its promises. She doesn't say goodbye, she opens her hand. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart even a little, that's our greatest joy. If you'd like, please share your thoughts in the comments. We'll keep bringing you stories that stay with you, so please consider subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video.